Welcome to the FarmBits podcast.
FarmBits is proudly produced by the Nebraska Digital Agriculture team and hosted by students at the University of Nebraska.
The FarmBits podcast comes to each week to discuss the trends, the realities, and the values of digital agriculture.
Through interviews with experts, producers, and innovators from across the agriculture industry, we hope that you step away from each episode with new practical knowledge of digital agriculture technology.
Hello, FarmBits followers, and welcome to another episode of FarmBits podcast. I'm Natasha and Emily.
And I'm Emily Hansen, and we are glad to have you with us as we begin diving into the topic of digital tools and animal production.
Today, we are joined by Caroline Forrest, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Intelia.
Intelia is a company that offers real-time data for poultry production.
So my name is Caroline Forrest. I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing for Intelia. I joined the company back in 2015 to launch what we call internally our big data journey. So that was our venture into a digital solution for poultry production. So that's what I was tasked with doing, and I've been working with the company on that mission ever since.
This is nice. And can you tell a little bit to us about Intelia, what the company does and how it gets started?
Yeah, sure. So Intelia was founded in 1999, and at the time we were solely a controller manufacturer. So we were manufacturing climate controllers and lighting controllers for livestock. So several livestock producers own Intelia product without knowing, because most of it was manufactured under a private label. But because of that, we were in contact with livestock producers, and we could see that it was becoming extremely difficult for them to balance, the imperatives of productivity, animal welfare, and sustainability. So we realized that providing them with just more data, which is what controllers essentially do, was not going to help. They needed a clearer picture, not more data, so that they could take action more quickly without having to overanalyze everything. So that's what we decided to focus on. So instead of just managing the climate control, the climate and the equipment, we decided to provide, to digitize the farm's activities. So I'm sure you know that for poultry production, up to 70% of the cost of producing 1 pound of chicken happens from activities at the farm. So every decision you make during a day is going to have an impact on that cost being what you expect it to be or being higher than what you expect to be. So what we did is that we decided to collect information from sensors and turn it into broadcast actionable insight across decision makers. So not only the farmer, but also the people that collaborate with the production chain. So that's the feed mill, that's the processing plant, that's sometimes the veterinarians that will help with animal welfare and health. So we make that data available across the value chain.
That's really interesting. So where is Intelia based out of, and where is the majority of your customers?
So Intelia is based out of Canada. So we're just outside of Montreal. As you may know, Montreal is a very big hub for artificial intelligence. And that's really what we try to infuse into all of the data that we're collecting. So that's where we're at. And our customer base right now is mostly Canada and the States, the majority of it in the States. But we're also venturing in Mexico, Europe, and we've just started doing business in Southeast Asia as well.
Oh, this is nice. And Caroline, can you tell us a little bit what kind of products Intelia has and can offer to the producers?
Yeah. So for the audience to understand, let me first explain what you need to get the full benefits of the digitalization solution for poultry production. So first, you need to collect the data. The data needs to get out of the farm. Most of the data is already there, but it's disconnected islands of data. So you have some data that's in the controller, some data that's on paper forms that are filled at the farm, some data that is in the head of the producer. So all of that data needs to be digitized and pushed to the cloud. So the next step that you need is advanced analytics. So again, I to the risk of repeating myself, farmers don't need more data, they need insight. They need actionable insight so that they're going to be able to make decisions more quickly. So you need to have advanced analytics and ideally artificial intelligence to allow you to detect things that the normal human brain will not be able to pick up on. And the last segment or the last element that you need is software, because that data and that insight is valuable only if you can see it and if there's a way for it to reach you in a timely manner. So that's what we do. We have what we call a full stack solution. So we cover all those elements, or we can, collaborate with other vendors to provide that full stack to our customers.
Yeah, that's really helpful to be able to have those options. Would you be able to give us a little bit of an overview of Compass?
Yeah. So Compass is the software platform. So that's the last part that I just mentioned. That's where the data, the relevant data and the information is going to be visualized in a meaningful and actionable way for all the actors in the value chain. So it's a web-based portal and also a mobile app. So when you subscribe to Compass, you get access to both of them. And the information is available to users based on the authorization that they have. So if I'm an integrator, for instance, and a poultry integrator, then as the manager, I may have access to all the farms. As a supervisor, I may have access to just a portion of the chicken houses. And if I'm a farmer, obviously I only have access to my farm, so my houses under me. So that's it. The information is presented on a house level. So you can drill down and literally see each house inside of the system. But then there's also another level that gets created through dashboards for the integrator at a higher level. So they may not care what's going on inside of each house. They want to have an overview of their whole production. And so we have that level through dashboards and reports.
This is very, very nice. And it's good because the producers they can access the data from any resource, right? Like computers,
Yeah.
cell phones.
Cell phone.
It helps a lot.
Yeah. And it was very important for us to make sure that we were delivering value to the farmer, because everything starts at the farm. So there are systems out there that are only accessible to the integrator, but not to the farmer. So we thought that was a flaw, because the farmer is the one who's physically there at the chicken house. So if there's a notification, or if something is not going in the way it should, then the farmer is the first response. So he's the first responder. He's there and he can take action immediately and that's the best way that you have to reduce your risk of having an adverse event at the production.
Oh, this is nice. And Caroline, if, for example, since the farmers they can use the cell phone to access the data, but if they don't have the internet for the service in that moment, they still can access, or it will uh update after they have the service
Yeah. Yeah, so of course, if you don't have internet access at the farm, then the data is still collected, because that part of the internet service that's required to push the data to the cloud, Intelia owns. So we take responsibility for that. But that's separate. So let's say the data is there, it's being pushed in the clouds every 15 minutes, but I'm a farmer and for some reason, my cell phone doesn't have service at the chicken farm. Then the mobile app will allow me, when I have access, to download the data to look at it offline. But the gateway that we install also at the farm has all the information. So even if you don't have a cell phone, or if you don't have internet service on your phone, you can always view on the gateway at the farm every data point that is being collected. So we try to make sure that everybody has access to the data in the most meaningful way and timely fashion.
Yeah, that seems extremely helpful for producers. So what kind of information is tracked using Compass, and then how is it collected?
So right now we collect different sensors. So everything related to climate. So temperature, humidity, ammonia, other gases like CO2 or carbon monoxide. All of it can be monitored. And then all of the other indicators that are very important for production. So anything related to bird weight, feed and water consumption, as well as mortality. And I want to highlight the fact that aside from mortality, all of this data is gathered automatically. There is no manual data entry or any effort from the farmer or anybody involved. The machine does it all.
That seems very helpful.
Yes, this is really.
It's the only way to ensure a reliable and consistent data flow, because whenever there's manual data entry, there can be mistakes made. You don't punch in the right number, or you don't have the time to punch it in on that day. So we see it with mortality, but mortality is not critical. I mean, if you have like 100 dead birds today, and tomorrow you've got 50, it doesn't matter if tomorrow you enter 150. As long as the tally is accurate, you'll be fine. One day of difference is not going to be to make a big deal. But if your temperature is at a critical level, you have to know now, because you probably have 15-20 minutes to react before the birds are dead.
And this is really important because, as you mentioned about the temperature, is something that you need to act really fast. So this can help.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
to get those data, do you need a specific sensors for this? Can you explain?
So we try to be as open as possible to interfacing with other. So you have to understand that most poultry houses right now are under digitized. So there's very few digital sensors installed. So usually the project starts with the installation of sensors at the house. Now we don't have to install the full package of sensor. We understand that there's a cost associated with those sensors that you need to install. And so we try to install the right amount of sensors to unlock the return on investment you're looking for. So if your main challenge is monitoring feed and making sure that you don't run out of feed, that you monitor that the birds are eating the right feed at the right time, you want to monitor how the diets are changed, that type of stuff. So everything, if your challenge is around feed, we'll install bin scales to monitor that feed consumption on a continuous basis. And then that information will then be shared across the value chain, and it's going to have some positive impacts. It's going to help with the planning of the delivery of the feed, making sure that you never run out, because that can have very negative consequences. We can also make sure that we predict you the amount of feed you're going to need so that you never deliver too much, because all that also involves some additional cost, because that feed will then have to be picked up and moved to another farm at the end of the flock. So once the birds are out, this feed is no longer needed, but you don't want to waste it because there's cost to that. So moving it has a cost as well, and you want to prevent that. So we go in with the right sensor package. Once that return on investment is then achieved, then you can always add new sensors. The system is modular, so it can grow with you. And who knows what type of sensor is going to be invented in 2 years. I have no idea. The space is evolving so quickly that it's difficult to foresee what will happen. Cameras are very big right now, as well as audio monitoring. So let's say in 2 years, you want to add audio to your Intelia system. We have the ability to do that. So we can interface with a third-party sensor. We don't manufacture an audio device. So we interface with a third-party sensor, and then we deliver you that additional insight and additional actionable information.
Yeah, that seems very nice to be able to have the opportunity to add more sensors in the future as things evolve.
So Caroline, one thing that I like it that you have mentioned, it's about that producers, they don't need more data. They need to, like a panel that it can help them to get some inputs about the production. So can you tell us or explain a little bit how Intelia can make those data easier for the producers to understand and to visualize these inputs?
Sure. So let's say that the average weight your birds have today does not match what we predicted 7 days ago. Okay, so that means that whether the birds are bigger or smaller than what we predicted, it means that the course of the bird's growth is not going the way it was planned. So you're going to receive a notification on your cell phone, okay, saying that the birds are deviating from expected growth. So we tell you that so that you can take action. Now, there could be various reasons for that. Maybe there's a very valid reason, Let's say that yesterday you vaccinated the birds. Well, of course, they're going to be impacted, and their growth is going to be impacted for a short period of time. So there's nothing to be worried about. That was totally foreseen from you. So the notification you're receiving, you can just acknowledge it, and that's it. It's gone, because there's nothing to worry about. But if this is not backed by anything, there's no reason that you can think of that the birds are not growing the way they should, well, maybe you're going to go into that chicken house and spend a little bit more time, because something may be off. Maybe you'll call the vet because there might be an issue that you're not sure is being there. So getting that early warning that something is off allows you to focus your attention where it really has value. So maybe this house is the first one that you go visit to start your day, instead of going, to each house one after the other in a routine way. You focus your attention where it really matters. So that's what we try to do when I say actionable insight, is to bring, I like to call them nuggets of information, So when you go for gold searching, there's this whole bunch of sand, and then you have these sieve that you're going to use to try to bring the nuggets to the surface. Well, that's what we want. We want to bring the information that you need to see, to make sure that you have it in front of you at all times when it matters.
Yeah, it's really important to have the information that you need to make those important decisions.
Absolutely. If it's not actionable, it's garbage. It's noise, really. It's going to disrupt your day without bringing any value. It has to be actionable.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're counting on the farmer to do the analysis. And trust me, they don't have time for that. They're too busy with their day-to-day job.
Yes, that is true.
So does Intelia have some sort of a training program for new clientele to kind of guide them through the process of analyzing all of the data that is stored?
Absolutely. It's a must, because we recognize that using digital solutions to make decisions at the farm is very different from what producers have been doing up until now. So there's a learning curve to using digital tools at the farm, and we guide our customers step by step through the process of transforming their production to a more digitized one. So the ultimately, we think that users know what to do with the information. It's just that it's delivered in a different way. They used to rely on their five senses to gather that information. And that's the part that we automate, that we take care of for them. We do it more accurately and more consistently than they do, but ultimately they have to make the decisions. I mean, Intelia, as good as the system is, if we bring you the insight, that nugget that I was talking about, and you don't take action on it, bad things will happen. That you won't be able to prevent the negative events that we try to prevent for you. So the farmer's always in the driver's seat, always. And I think it's not a good way to approach digital solution, to think that they're going to replace the farmer. I don't think that's possible. You just have to make their work more efficient by providing them the right information at the right time.
Yeah, and this process, we used to say, is transforming numbers in message, right? Because we can have many numbers, but we need to understand what this means. So
that's it. That's it.
And Caroline, we already mentioned about one problem that we could face, that is not having the service, the internet connection during this process. But that is another issues that the producers can face, and how they could overcome with this.
Well, one example is I mentioned briefly the fact that we're producing antibiotic-free chicken now, mostly, and that what that does is that it's going to, if there's a disease happening on the farm, you have less ways to correct. And right now, I mean, everybody is aware of it. There's an epidemic of avian flu. So when an avian flu is happening, where there's outbreaks around you and all of that, you're going to limit the amount of people going to the farm, There's very strict biosecurity measures put in place, especially if you produce your chicken for an integrator or a processor. And visits at that farm are going to be limited. So if you detect that there's a disease outbreak, and you cannot give medication or you cannot give antibiotics, and you have a situation you don't know what to do, nobody will want to visit your farm. So there's very limited solutions that you have to address that disease. So the faster you know, the quicker you can take action. So I'll give you very good example. So there was one of our customers, the farmer connected to Compass. First start of his day, he looked on the web, saw a decrease in water and feed consumption. That was not supposed to happen. There was nothing to explain that. He looked at temperature. All of this is done remotely up until that point. So he looks at temperature and he cannot see anything in the data that we provide that could explain the drop in water and feed consumption. So he decides that he's going to go immediately to that chicken house to see what's happening. And there was a disease outbreak, not avian flu, but and I forget what the disease was, but it was a disease outbreak. It was just starting, but it was enough to have registered on our system as a drop in feed and water consumption. So he started a culling strategy. So he decided to identify the sick birds and essentially euthanize them in a very humane way to prevent the spread of the disease. And doing that, he ended up having a flock with a higher mortality that was anticipated, but he was able to stop the spread of the disease and deliver his chickens to the integrator. The healthy birds made it to the processing plant, and so the farmer got his pay. And ultimately, it did not impact his performance because the feed conversion remained the same as what it usually is. And so the impact for both the farmer on his revenue and the integrator on the amount of pounds that were delivered to the processing plant were minimal. So if it had not been from the early warning signs that we delivered to that farmer, he may have missed it. He could have walked the house and not noticed that there was something wrong.
Yeah, it's really nice that the warning signs were able to give him an insight on what was happening so he could make those changes before the disease spread to his entire flock.
That's it.
What do you think the importance of having digital tools in poultry production is?
I think that in the future, if we want to continue to produce quality and humanely grown chicken, I think that digital tools will be essential. We see it. The poultry industry is no different than any other industries in that it's plagued with a lack of labor right now. So there's a limit to what can be done from existing resources. There's a limit to what you can ask and what can be done in 24 hours. So at some point, you have to automate some of the manual tasks that both the farmer and the integrators have to do. So there is no reason today, with the technology being what it is, for anybody to spend time recording temperature and mortality and water consumption and running out of feed, really. So already, if you can remove all of those obstacles using digital tools, you're liberating some time from your already very taxed resource. You're liberating time for them to concentrate on what has more value, like paying attention to bird health, paying attention to animal welfare. All of that is time. It's things that maybe are overlooked right now simply because they have to make sure they're not running out of feed. So there's no reason for that. And going forward, I really think that digital tools will be the best solution, the best option for creating more sustainability with poultry production.
Yes, we can see there are many benefits using the digital tools in
Yes.
the production. But I imagine sometimes some producers, they cannot understand easily these benefits. So can you share with us some challenge that Intelia had in the beginning, or even I believe nowadays they might still face those type of challenge, and how the Intelia used to overcome this?
Yeah, sure. It's not just Intelia, it's every digital solution provider. The two main challenges that we see, the first one is resistance to change. So up until now, the industry, and even now, the industry is still very successful. I mean, everybody makes money with growing chicken is a good way to make a living, both for farmers and certainly for integrators and processors. People eat a lot of chicken, so it's the most consumed meat in the world. So that's not going to change. That's only going to increase. So because the situation right now is still sustainable, there's always the question, well, okay, the fear to be wrong. What if I change and it's not helping me as much as I thought it would? There is still we're at the early stages of digitization, and I'm sure that your audience is probably more familiar with the evolution of digitization on the crop side. So if you're a crop farmer, you've already embraced a level of digitization that is unseen right now in the poultry industry. So we're still in the early stages. So there's that resistance to change because it hasn't been widely proven yet on a very large scale that the benefits are what we anticipate them to be. I mean, we can look at the crop sign, and us technology providers certainly look at it and say, okay, they have found a way to improve the yields, to improve to optimize the production. So we'll have the same benefits on poultry, I'm sure. So it's just a question of time, it starts slow, but once it starts gaining traction, then it evolves. And we're seeing that right now. We're at the early stages of traction where we have major players making the move towards digital technology. The second challenge would be the willingness to pay. So whether it's in Canada where we have the quota system, so the industry is a little bit organized differently than in the United States, but ultimately the data belongs to the farmer. Okay, so that doesn't change, and farmers have been told that their data is worth something, so they want to be compensated for sharing that data. And ultimately, the processors or the feed mills or the integrator that includes all of those activities have to recognize the fact that the farmer is sharing the data willingly, but that they are the ones gaining the most benefits. So the farmer doesn't have the volume that the integrator has. So if one farmer is able to improve his yield using digital tool and thus delivering more pounds of chicken to the processor, then imagine what the processor can make when there's hundreds of farmers using the same digital technology. Ultimately, they're the ones who are going to save millions of dollars with that technology, whereas it's potentially just hundreds of dollars per flock for a single farmer. So who's going to pay for the technology? The one who most benefits from it, or the one who owns the data and makes it available? So that's going to be fun to watch. So right now, what we're seeing is mostly the integrator or the processor is agreeing to pay for the solution and compensate the farmer in a fair way after that. So they recognize that they are the ones gaining the most money off of the savings the system can generate, and they compensate the farmer in a fair way for that.
What kinds of things are you looking forward to in the future with Intelia?
Oh my God, and that has to be what artificial intelligence is going to unlock for us, really. The system, the machine learning that Intelia has put in place is extremely powerful. So our capabilities have grown exponentially, really. We've been collecting an outstanding body of data for the last 6 years. So just on bird weight alone, just on average weight, I should say, we have over 2.6 billion data points. So that's just on bird weight. So when you add feed on top of that, all of it's an extremely rich body of data. And what we're going to uncover from that is unlimited. The capacity of the machine to find valuable predictive models off of the data in a short period of time is just unbelievable. Really, I did not think it was possible. To give you an idea, it took us 2 years to get the first predictive model for bird weight back in 2018. Yes, 2018. And it only took us a couple of months to deliver the third generation of the same algorithm. And the accuracy of that model is unparalleled, really. So we're able to predict bird weight 7 days ahead with an accuracy of plus or minus 3%. So, and we are able to do that 80% of the time. So it's a major improvement. To give you an example of one of our current customers, using their previous way of doing things. So they were still predicting bird weight 7 days ahead, but they were doing it with a combination of manual weighing. So sending somebody at the farm to manually weigh the chicken, use that information, compare it to historical data, and then predict bird weight. So it was very time consuming to do that. And the accuracy of the prediction was 50%. So a lot of effort for a result that was no better than flipping a coin. Mm-hmm. With our system, it's 100% automated. And the accuracy, like I said, is plus or minus 3%. 80% of the time. So it's fully automated. Nobody has to spend time. It takes minutes, literally, to create the catch schedule based on that predicted weight. So it's a huge time saving for the processor in question. And it's a huge benefit for the farmer as well, because they get compensated when they deliver birds of a specific weight at the processing plant. They get a premium for it. So it's worth it for everyone involved.
This is great. This is nice. And still talk about the future. So is the company has some plan to expand the service to another production?
So ultimately, yes. The short answer is yes. We do want to have a leading position, to establish a leading position in chicken production, broiler production, essentially. But we already see value and how easy it would be for us to go into egg production, or even breeder, like the reproduction farms, or turkeys. It's just a matter of adding different sensors. So if we're talking of egg production, we're already monitoring everything related to bird health. What we don't have is a sensor for egg counting or egg grading. Well, those sensors exist, so we would just have to tie that into our data stream, and we'd be up and running. So it's just a matter of establishing first a leading position in broiler, and then use that as a stepping stone for other poultry species. But who knows? Even swine is something that we've had our eyes on, because it's pretty much the same thing. You're always talking about growing a live animal to a specific weight until it's ready to be harvested. So
Yeah, that's
it's
very
very
interesting. If our viewers wanted to reach out to you to learn more, where could they go to contact you guys?
Well, they can certainly go to our website. So that's intelia.com. And they can contact us in there, or ask even for a demo. And they can follow us on social media, to stay current on what we do. So we're present on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on Twitter. So make sure that you search for Intelia Technologies, and we're pretty easy to find.
This is good to have those sources as well to reach out.
So a tradition that we have here on the FarmBits podcast is to ask for a piece of advice. So what advice do you have for a producer who's just starting to manage their flock with digital technology?
Well, I think that the first step is to make sure that your solution provider is able to support you both on the hardware side and the software side. So there are companies out there that are very good with the software, but if you have a problem with the hardware, the sensors are not providing the data, you don't want to end up being caught in people finger pointing. So that's the first thing. Make sure that vendor has a well-rounded expertise into all things related to digital solution, not just software. The second thing would be, make sure that your selected vendor has proven collaboration with complementary vendors. So you don't want to be stuck with an unsatisfying or incomplete solution that delivers only partially on the promises of what digital solutions can provide. So you want to have a flexible supplier capable of interfacing with other digital solutions to relieve you from being trapped in a solution that's not evolving. I mentioned that sensors are going to evolve. There's new sensors being put out on the market all the time. So you want to be able to benefit from those new sensors, new technology coming up, and having the ability to have a vendor that's flexible enough to interface with third parties like that is essential.
Yeah, this is great.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Thank you very much to Caroline for taking the time to join us on this episode of the FarmBits podcast. It's really exciting to see how digital tools have helped the poultry industry. One of my favorite parts of this episode was seeing how sensors helped a producer catch a disease in his flock before it spread.
I also think it was interesting that Intelia gives producers an easier way to see information. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode, and we look forward to sharing another digital egg story with you next week on FarmBits. Thank you for taking the time to join us today on the FarmBits podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts to be informed about the latest content each week.
We welcome your feedback, so if you have comments or questions for us, please reach out to us over email, on Twitter, or in the review sections of your favorite podcast platforms. Our contact information can be found in the show notes.
We would like to thank you, Nebraska Extension, for their support of this podcast and their commitment to providing high-quality informational material to members of the agricultural community in Nebraska and beyond.
The opinions expressed by the hosts and guests on this podcast are solely their own and do not reflect the views of Nebraska Extension or the University of Nebraska-Lincoln.
We look forward to you joining us next week for another episode of FarmBits.